Welcome to another episode of Box Tot. Got an amazing lineup today for you. I want them to introduce themselves because they're worthy of their own introduction. One that I could not outdo. Starting to my left is an alumni here at Beverly Hills High School that won her entry into Studio B right here, Beverly Hills. Let's start off with Stephanie.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Stephanie Samuels. I am the director and founder of Copline, which is a international hotline for police officers manned by retired police officers all over the United States and Canada. And when I went to Beverly, interestingly enough, we had a teen line that started when I was 14. I was part of the peer counseling team, and they had asked whether or not there are any teens that might be interested in working and answering phones for other teens. So I began back then, and the lines actually went live when I was 16. So that is going to be, we're celebrating our 40th year for what is now known as Teen Line Care. So as I continued, I became a psychotherapist,
So it all started here.
It did. It did.
Wow. Never say that high school doesn't send you in the direction you're supposed to go.
Absolutely.
At least it attempts to, right?
Yes.
Or attempt. It also sends you in a direction sometimes that you shouldn't go.
It's all learning.
Yeah.
It's all learning. Sometimes you fall on your face, which key is to get up and keep moving.
Right. Well, you did an amazing job. I don't know the story, but you've landed literally an international figure to help with the cause. I think that in itself, this moment is to be celebrated, to be actually in the same presence as somebody who's so. Look, if it was just The Simpsons, that'd be enough. But he's the real deal.
He absolutely is, and so humble and so amazing in his portrayal of what he does, and has never lost sight of the men and women that actually wear that badge. But what a wonderful, wonderful spokesperson for us. We couldn't be more honored to.
Could you introduce yourself?
My head's not be able to float out of this room now. No, well, this is Joe Mantegna, who is not in law enforcement, but I've played plenty of them on television and film and stage and everywhere else. Well, thank you for those. Thank you for those comments. But and Fat Tony too. There's somebody from the other side of the law. Speaking of The Simpsons, I've been doing that for 30 years.
And you stole that from your grandfather, right?
Actually, my uncle.
Oh, your
my
uncle
Willie. I have an Uncle Willie who literally talked like this. So I don't get mad. I get stabby. I know that's what I can tap into Fat Tony when I have to. Just thinking about my Uncle Willie. But anyway, as I showed you earlier, I think we showed you a little piece of video footage of me, I think at 10 years old, doing a little bit on Ralph Edwards' This Is Your Life. It's a long story as to why I was on that show. But at 10 years old, they asked, Ralph Edwards asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up, Joey? And I go, I want to be a policeman. So there's visual, documented proof of me wanting to be in law enforcement at 10 years old. But anyway, I'm happy to be here and happy to be supporting, which is just a wonderful thing that you're doing here with what we're going to be talking about Copline and the things that what this is all about.
And we're glad to have you, Joe.
And I'm passing on to one of the real guys here.
Yeah, I'm Jim Alvarez, retired from the LAPD as a police captain, did 30 years, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be here. I started off with the Sheriff's Department, did 2 years, got tired of the custody thing, so I came over to the LA side. And I saw this on the rotator page when I retired. Copline needed retired officers to help out on the line, hotline. And the two words that stood out were confidential and anonymous, because I knew with the stigma that officers have attached to them about not coming forward and talking about what their feelings, I knew we had brother and sister officers across the nation that don't have anybody to turn to. So this was a no-brainer for me, and I called her up right away and says, I would like to be a part of this. So we're glad to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I really wasn't introduced to the suicide rate of not only police officers but firemen. People, but right now it's really the big focus is on on policemen, especially in New York City. It was 9 in 1 year in one of the departments. Is it 10 now?
It's 10.
It's 10.
For NYPD.
And you wonder what is the root cause that would allow such a high percentage of such a, it's really an esteemed profession.
What you're trying to do is make sense of the senseless, which is always difficult, particularly with a suicide, no matter what the vocation is. But what we do find is that it's not the rookies that are dying by suicide. It's those officers that typically have at least 15 years on the job, and a lot of times people have no idea. There seems to be issues with relationship problems. What we are finding is that there's cumulative effects. So, one of the whole purposes for Copline, and it not being a quote-unquote suicide hotline, is what we know is that if we can deal with the underlying psychosocial stressors that these law enforcement officers and their families go through on a daily basis, and they have a safe place that is confidential, that they are not afraid that their phones are going to be pinged, somebody's coming to their house or what have you, that they can deal with what's going on, that we should be able to impact the suicide rate itself. And, there had been a study done many years ago with NYPD by a woman by the name of Dr. Ivanoff, and what she had found was relationships was the number one reason for officers to die by their own hands, and that job stress was at the bottom. So I wondered, because when you look at research, you wonder whether or not, if they weren't in that job, that they would have had the relationship problems. And I don't think that that's what it is. But this is really a population that they want to protect their loved ones. They don't want to go home and talk about the evils that they have seen and the decisions that they've made. And so they typically try and reconnect at home and keep the other real negative stuff to themselves. They don't want their spouses to worry. And there's only so much that you can keep just shoving down and shoving down and shoving down until, the dam's
She
gonna
said, so
burst.
one was relationship and the other one was jobs. That's what she concluded.
Number one was relationship. The bottom was job stress.
Oh, I see.
So it was interesting looking at that dichotomy and then saying, okay, but if we really kind of went into this, would we find that the relationship issue, that was the number one reason, really stemmed from the vocational stuff? That,
Yeah, I mean, just being, like I said, playing a pretend person here for 15 seasons. We did this show, Criminal Minds, which at times was very kind of show, obviously, the gruesome aspects of what can happen, what people can do to each other, especially people with a criminal mind. And I would be often asked, constantly asked, especially over all the years I've been doing the show, in interviews, they would say, doesn't it bother you? Doesn't it freak you out? Isn't it creepy to be that show? Because I can't watch, they'll say, I watch it, I tape it and watch it in the morning, or I cover my eyes when the bad parts come. Doesn't it bother you? And I started to think about that, and my answer has always been no. It doesn't bother me, because I know that what I'm doing is it's a reflection of what really does happen, and it's the fictional version of often true stories. But what I say is, it's given me incredible sympathy and simpatico for the people who really do that job. So, and it makes, in a way, in some way, makes me understand why, just what you're talking about, why this is an issue. Because I think to myself, when we're shooting a scene as gruesome as it can be, and as emotionally, how much emotion or terror or whatever, all the aspects of a person who does this job for a living, when they say cut on the sound stage, all of a sudden, everybody goes, oh, let's take a break, and the guy who just has an axe in his head gets up and gets a sandwich. That's not what happens in real life. And so when you start comparing that to what so here's somebody worrying about me, Joe Mantegna, the actor, like, oh, doesn't it bother you to do that show? And I think, oh, no. But let's go, why don't you go talk to those people that have to do that for real, and then go home at night and try to be, and then have their kid come up running up to them and say, hey, Daddy, I want to do this and I want to do that, and they wonder why maybe Daddy or Mommy is a little on edge or a little freaked out. And so because of that, it's given me tremendous sympathy and tremendous respect for our men and women in whatever the uniform may be, whether it's cops, firemen, military. But in this particular instance, they're talking about the police. And especially nowadays with all the scrutiny and everything else, it's like they're on top of, the microscope has been even expanded to everything they do, everything they say, everything is examined. And yes, that's a good thing. but the stress it must create is just, it's unbelievable.
It reminds me of somebody going into battle, sending them to Desert Storm or sending them
Sure.
to Vietnam, and they do the job, they do exactly what they were sent to do, but there's no relief on the mental side of it. There's no relief in just the humanity that somebody needs an outlet, like they should be on for 3 months and off for 3 months type of thing, because
Sure.
it's just they're not a school teacher. Do you know what I mean? Even a school teacher is off for 3 months. But the idea is it's there's no balance. In I think the exposure to those type of inhuman kind of effects have a wearing effect on anybody.
For those many years I was doing Criminal Minds, I tried to bring, and I talked to the producers about it and the writers about it, wanting to bring humor into the characters and moments whenever possible, and sometimes in very macabre situations. And where I partly got that from, and Jim, you could probably relate to this, I was doing a movie called Homicide in Baltimore years ago. And so in order to get us, as part of the research, they had to sit down with 2 Baltimore hardcore homicide cops, myself and William H. Macy, who played my partner in the movie. So these guys came in, and I'll never forget it. We're sitting in a room. They said, these are the 2 real homicide guys. They want to talk to you, Joe and Bill, to kind of give you, in the next hour or so, maybe a snap thing of what it's like to be homicide. So I noticed they had a big book with them. And they laid it down. They go, okay, boys, you want to know what it's like to be a homicide cop? Okay, we thought we'd bring you some visual aids.
There you go.
And they started flipping those pages. No, I saw it on Bill's face. I saw the blood drain out of Bill's face as they were showing us some of the most horrific kind of photos. This was like that murder book, the thing that he's showing us, stills that the coroner
Faces
basically
of
took.
death.
Oh, I mean, and done in the most extreme things, like you think to yourself, this is really, people do these things to each other, and these guys are looking at us, just kind of basically seeing what the reaction is going to be. Now, I'll never forget Bill saying, he started to lose a little bit. He's going, I got a costume fitting in about 10 minutes. I'm going to have to go. So he goes, and I realized, and I knew what was going on. I'm saying, no, I'm in, boys. And they're looking at me like, you going to go? I go, no, I'm there. I get it. And so then we finished the book. And then we start talking about, okay, I get it. I see what you have to deal with every day. But as they were showing some of the pictures, they would actually start to make a little joke about some of it. Like, oh yeah, this guy, doesn't he look a little bit like the Pillsbury Doughboy? Because, in reality, he had been had been sitting out there for months and he's bloated and exactly right. That he says, if we didn't laugh, find some kind of humor in that, we might go home and take that pistol and put it to our own heads and blow our heads off. He says that is just what you said. Maybe you could.
Yeah, you mentioned
comment on
exposure
that.
and you mentioned horrific. So we can never forget obviously what our officers are dealing with today. Obviously, they deal with shift work and frequent shift changes, modified deployments on holidays and special events that occur. They are pulled in multiple directions. Obviously, there's forced overtime for shortages in manpower, but they're responding to the most horrific incidents today in modern day history, which is the mass shootings. So they're taking all that in. And we have to remember, officers from day one are being groomed to be the saviors of society, right? How dare a peacekeeper show any weakness? Because if they show weakness in the field, we know what's going to happen. Their adversaries are going to use aggression against them, and that's going to be a threat to themselves, their partner, and our community members out there. So these officers, here's into the stigma, they're keeping this inside. It goes into their personal lives, and they're not going to talk about those photos on the dinner table with their family because you just can't go there. So everything's staying inside. There's no outlet, which is why Copline exists today, because we are out there, retired officers, willing to take that phone call. Because sometimes they don't have anybody to turn to, and that's the reason we're here.
I'm going to piggyback on that because it's not all retired officers that can take these calls. So the vetting process is pretty tight, and what we have found, so we've gone through seven classes. We've only had three classes where everybody has successfully completed it. A lot of that has to do with not the fact that we're these tough-ass people that are kind of jamming them up. The role plays get more and more difficult. They get more and more significant, and although these people are more than qualified to answer these lines due to their CV and what they've experienced, what they're struggling with is the emotional connection that you have to have. It's really understanding what empathy is, not sympathy, but empathy, and being able to get in this hole with your fellow officer and being able to sit there with them. And that requires you to feel pain. It requires you to be real. And it is probably one of the most daunting tasks to ask somebody that has completed their career to actually go back in that hole and now sometimes do what they have not done in their entire careers, and that is to feel. So, you know, I think sometimes when people, okay, you know, this is great, they're retired officers, they understand. They're not just retired officers that understand. They have been vetted and they have been put through hell. And we look at their own critical incidents. Our role plays are typically have to do with stuff other officers have been involved in. It's myself and another clinician, police psychologist, Dr. Jay Magdaman, who is with LAPD, that comes up with a lot of these role plays, and I know our volunteers like Jim have also done that. So they're the real deal. They're not just stuff that you know people make up. They're what we have experienced as clinicians, working with law enforcement, with our officers have seen. And so when somebody does call those lines, and when people have wanted to volunteer and they're like, I've been through all of this stuff and, you know, I'm great, I was a hostage negotiator, I did this and that, and I have no doubt they're incredible. But the question is, can you feel? Are you prepared to go into a world that a lot of times you have absolutely avoided at all costs? And that's really why we've only been able to complete 3 full classes of individuals without people, what we call self-excluding, finally saying, you know, I thought I was ready, but I realize now I'm just not. So.
When you say classes, what a class constitutes someone who's going to be on the other end of the phone?
Correct. So that there's a vetting process. So they fill out a questionnaire, which goes to me. I then make the phone call. I vet them on the lines, and then we invite them to where the next training's going to be. So our next one's going to be in Texas, because don't forget we're international, so it's not always convenient.
Right.
But I have found that cops are more than happy to travel.
Yeah.
And God bless them, because it's at their own expense. We pay for the training, but they cover all of their expenses otherwise. So that's also difficult, but that's not a guarantee that you're going to end up answering the lines.
Right.
So it's 40 hours, and it is 40 full hours from morning into the night of doing, you know, learning, as well as a lot of role plays, which is just grueling.
One of the things that I noticed after 3 decades in law enforcement, I've been to my share of schools, and the team teaching with Stephanie and Dr. J is outstanding. They cover so many topics that are good for retired officers now to put on that new hat and start saying, okay, I got to listen to those key words that they're teaching me, and that's where they perform on the lines.
Yeah, it's no doubt a special learning that, you know, you got to have the right kind of temperament and the right kind of persona, and the you know, it's not easy to, I mean, you could spot someone who's useful, right? And you can spot somebody who's a detriment, right? It's a really fine line.
The most difficult thing is so that we teach active listening skills. So what have cops been doing their entire careers? Giving advice.
Right.
So when we have the first questionnaire, they're like, I'm really good at giving advice. And I'm like, awesome, this is going to be hell for you. It's just like you look at this and you think, we got a higher mountain than you think. Because this is absolutely not about giving advice, because to be non-judgmental, it's not about giving advice. So it's about understanding active listening skills, and that toolbox, which very few of these guys have, that toolbox. So it's really learning that, you know, this is a screwdriver. It's basic. There's a Phillips head, there's a flathead. We're going to start with that.
Walk me through if I phoned the hotline and I was an officer who was just at his limit, and I'm going to talk to you, and I don't know who you are, but you answered the phone, and I'm at my limit.
I'll tell you why officers call us, and then I'll tell you who calls us. So they call us for a variety of reasons. It could be marriage problems, anger management, depression, peer pressure, them versus us mentality, not only society towards the cops, but also management. That's their perception now. PTSD symptoms. A lot of our folks deployed in the field have prior military experience, so they've been treated for PTSD when they were severed their service time. So we have that as well. up to thoughts of suicide. So we have a gamut of what we're going to be dealing with. And the folks that call in, officers of all ages from various ranks. We could have a rookie officer who just was not prepared for the graphic violence that they're dealing with daily. The stress, the trauma, they can't handle that. So they want to reach out to a retired officer and try and look at some coping skills or some tools that they can get in their belt as they start their career in law enforcement. We've had some guys that 19 and a half years on the job, 6 months away from securing their pension, but because of some error in judgment, civil or criminal case, their reputation, their career, and their pension's at risk. So their world is caving in right now, and they're at the end. So we have to deal with that as well. And a lot of times we get some retired folks that are just lonely and depressed. Their social network is gone. No more anniversaries or functions due to distance, traveling, finances, health problems, and they just need
all
someone
your
to talk
buddies
to.
have died on the way.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
we get the full range of people calling
Wow,
us in.
that's a gamut.
And of course, family members, which is a great conduit for Copline to help out folks that don't have any way to go when they're dealing with their loved one.
I could give you another example too of a situation where I was privy to be part of that opened my eyes to about what kinds of things you have to go through and the ramifications of it. I've spent, because of being on the show Criminal Minds, which deals with the FBI, I was able to go to Quantico numerous times and actually spend time there. And then I do another show on the Outdoor Channel that also gave me an opportunity to go again. So I spent a good amount of time at Quantico. And one of the times there, they said, we want to run you through our simulator course, because it's like the most, a lot of police departments have them, a lot of organizations have, but the one at the FBI is like the platinum one. This is the one that, but I don't know how much this thing cost them, but it's like unbelievable because it's totally interactive. You go in there and it will react instantly to what decisions you make and things you say. They can almost instantly run the computer and change things. So he says, here's the situation. And they put me in the room, and I've got the fake, the gun that shoots a laser. And he says, here's the deal. There's this car. You're going to stop this car. This guy's going to jump out of the car. You deal with it. You think he might be something squirrely about this guy. That's all they tell me. So, okay, well, now the movie starts. Now the car's going. And I'm standing there going, okay. So now the car stops, it squeals to a stop. The guy jumps out of the car. Now, instantly, the guy starts coming toward me, and he's dressed like a normal guy. Everything's fine. He's saying, is there something wrong, officer? Is there something whatever he says? And I'm like, yes. And I'm trying to think all along what I'm supposed to do. So I'm saying, yeah, could you just please, and I've got my gun out. And I said, could you please put your hands above? So now he starts talking to me, and the guy who's running the movie is like adjusting as to what I'm saying. So now he says, oh, listen. He says, I'm a police officer myself. I'm going to show you my wallet. It's right here. Now, he's got his hands like above his, right alongside his head here. He says, I'm going to reach down and show you my wallet. And I'm saying, now, wait a minute, just keep your hands up now. I said, and he says, no. And he's reacted to what I'm saying. He's saying, no, I'm just going to show you my wallet. It's right. And he's slowly bringing his hands down, very slowly. And I have the gun out, and I'm pointing the gun at him. He says, I'm going to show you the gun, or the wallet. It's right here. It's right here. Okay, please don't go crazy. Don't shoot. It's right. And he's pointing, and he's reaching. He's closer. He gets to his belt. And I'm thinking, and I'm shaking now. And this is a movie, and I'm sweating, I'm shaking, and I'm saying whatever I'm saying. I'm saying, okay, now be careful, okay. And now he goes up here, be careful, don't go crazy. Here it is, it's my wallet. I'm an officer. I'm going to show you my credentials. All of a sudden, I see his hand go into his belt. As his hand is coming out, I see, oh my God, it's a gun. So I'm like, boom, 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 boom. And of course, he puts it out, boom, 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 boom. Now, of course, everything goes crazy. The lights come on in the building, the lights are flashing, things are going, they stop the film. And I go, oh my God, what happened? And they said, well, you shot 3 times, you missed twice, you hit him once, you wounded him, but he got his bullet off and you're dead. He got you.
Wow.
And I said, well, and I was totally shocked. I said, what was I supposed to do? I mean, the guy, and then they explained to me. They said, we've worked it out scientifically. He knew he was going to shoot you. He had the gun. He knew what he was going to do. So when his hands reached a certain, and they explained it to me, at the certain distance between his hands and his belt line, the amount of time for him to have made the decision, I now go pull the gun and shoot, that is that much quicker than you going, oh my God, that is a gun, even though it's already aimed at him, I'm going to shoot him before he shoots me. It's too late. So I said, what should I have done? And they said, the second he dropped his hands below his shoulders, when you told him to keep him up, you were justified to shoot him. And I said, and then instantly I realized all those incidents where they say, oh my God, that cop shot that kid because he hit, and all it was a phone, a cell phone, or it was this, or it was that. And I brought that up. I said, so you mean, I said, so if, it made me realize every person out there should have to go through the same simulator thing. So before you make a snap judgment about, well, why did they do that? It was a toy gun, or it was just a, they were coming at him and the thing wasn't really loaded, or it was like, it made me realize at that, the difference between a fraction of an instant was the difference between me being dead or me not being dead, and made me appreciate. Now, if I'm doing it through a movie, and I'm breaking out in a sweat, I'm getting a headache, and I'm thinking, what if the guy who's really had to do this? And so it all ties into just why, this is what your daily job is, and you have to deal with those kind of decisions,
Right.
and then be punished for it when, not because you made a mistake even, you could have might have made the correct move, but what it's going to come out is, oh, they shot this guy, and all it was a wallet. But,
Sure. Yeah.
but if it would have been a gun, it would have been a whole different scenario. Oh, policeman was killed today.
Right.
Too bad he didn't get his shot off first.
Sure.
The kids might have to be treated for a little PTSD.
Yeah.
He was only acting.
Some symptoms there, right?
They do. I mean, you have 1/100th of a second to make a decision that attorneys will take 5 years to
Right.
look over,
Right.
and you will be tried in the media before you will ever get into a courtroom. And that people don't realize that law enforcement officers have a gag order on them. They cannot talk to the media. So people are always saying, "Oh, why doesn't the cop come forward? He's got to be guilty." No, he's not allowed to talk to the media. So
The
that's
responsibilities and pretty overwhelming for some of our officers out there, and those that are dealing with problems that came to the job that we've talked about earlier. They're keeping that all inside, and all the stress is just mounting on top of them. And it takes a lot of courage to put on the vest and the uniform for officers to go in the field.
I think Joe hit a big
did.
thing when he spoke about the idea of introducing, some comedic relief. You can do that with your buddies, but imagine how that all disappears. You got to be a Boy Scout after that, or a Girl Scout. You know what I mean? After that, most of the time you're in the public view, and all that has to. Imagine how they have to bite their tongue in the middle of some public thing that they got to explain.
Well, you have to
And
maintain that professional
That's what
knowledge.
I mean.
Right,
That's
right.
that's. I could just see myself. That would never last. That lasts 2 days.
it's gallows humor. I mean,
yeah,
it's
that's
the
what
gallows
gets me.
humor that
That's what
helps them.
gets me out of everything.
I will tell you one thing that internationally, no officer will ever laugh about, joke about, and there's no gallows humor ever, which makes it even more difficult, is the death of a child. It is truly taboo, no matter what country you are in, that you'll never hear anybody joke about that. And you had mentioned about what they come on the job with, and I was talking to Joe before, and one of the things, I when I lecture and I train actually, and when I train for Copline, that some of the scenes from Criminal Minds is what I use because they have just done such an amazing job of dealing with some of the most difficult issues that law enforcement has before they ever get on the job, let alone the relationship issues and that stuff that you guys have truly just done brilliantly, and PTSD. But when Morgan,
Yeah,
Had-
Shamar
yeah,
Moore,
yep.
which we did this whole storyline, and it was nice because they revisited it, in fact. So in other words, it wasn't
Yes.
just a one-shot deal. They showed that, and I thought it was smart of them to pick the character that Shamar Moore played of Morgan, because first of all, Shamar is one of the most macho men on the planet Earth and beyond.
absolutely.
So which goes to show that this is not a situation that just happens to the weak ones or the ones that could be easily victimized.
Right, it was dealing with the child sexual abuse prior to the time that he had gone on the job,
Right.
and just brilliantly done. And when you look at statistics, it's 1 out of 3 females are molested, 1 out of 7 males, and yet in law enforcement, we find those numbers can be halved. And having it done the way that you guys did it, and with Morgan playing that character.
Yeah, well, which is great, is because you saw within those episodes, he would counsel then other,
Yes.
men that had been through it, and basically for him then to make that admission and to be able to say, look, hey, this happened to me. You have nothing to be embarrassed about, or being afraid to talk about it. This is something you're going to have to deal with, but it's okay. Well, you can do it.
Right, and the way that you guys as characters handled it, you didn't shun him. There was no sense of embarrassment, and that was another key, because people won't talk about it because they're afraid, my own is going to now, kind of treat me differently or shun me. And, looking at that last scene when, was it Beaumont? Yeah, I think that was his name, was being taken, and you guys were behind the cage, and just watching your faces truly embrace him. And and for the character talk about how he had wished that he had come forward, but the statute of limitations being up. But it's that one kid now will bring it into that statute of limitations, and the numbers are astonishing. If I said to you to guess how many males, how many different victims a male has that molests outside the family, I don't think you'd get within inside of 100 of that number, because the answer is 358 different victims. So when you were portraying that character, that episode, I'm sure, had an incredible effect on so many people that it really was able to make a huge difference, as do you.
Oh yeah, no, it's always rewarding when because I'll get emails, just random emails that'll go to a website that'll basically say, I just got one about a week ago from a young girl, just basically saying, I'm writing to your website because I don't know how else to reach maybe one of you people that connected with this show, but I just wanted to let you know that by watching your show has literally saved my life, because I was in an abusive relationship, and all of a sudden it came to a head, and I was in a situation, and I was able to recall some of the things that you did on the show that to save me from the situation. And to see that, okay, well, it's nice to know that maybe, from something that you look at as entertainment in some sort, it has a positive effect,
sure.
hits home, and
Sure.
actually makes a difference. And that's great.
You mentioned embarrassment, so the stigma that's connected to law enforcement, where officers do not want to release that information, because law enforcement officers are driven individuals. They would like to go work gangs, narcotics, vice, homicide, motors, SWAT, Metro, air
Adrenaline.
support. And if something gets out in the open to their agency about their personal lives, their personal problems, they feel that their career is tainted, and or maybe it could lead to losing their career in law enforcement. So the stigma is real and the fear is real for our officers across the board, nationwide, internationally, and that's why they hold and maintain everything inside. It's crucial for our officers to have some type of established support system, whether it's a family member, a friend, someone on the job, off the job, somebody that they can release that pressure, vent to, and talk about. The Copline provides it when they don't, and like I said, it covers the full gamut of folks that are out there.
We've gotten calls, most people, because, we're in California now, and I'm back east, is most people don't realize that. So in the Midwest, so on Monday, you've got officers who were working at 7-Eleven. On Tuesday, they now have a gun badge and patch. They can
Good point,
patrol areas the size of Delaware, single patrol, no backup, no protection, $12 an hour, and they don't have to go through the police academy for 12 months.
Wow.
And that's what we're looking at. So, sometimes I think we become jaded. One of the nice things about being national than international is really kind of looking at this nation and going, oh my God, like we, LA and California is target rich with some of these things, East Coast or what have you. But once you start getting into the Midwest, these services just aren't there. So it's not unusual for us to get a call from somebody who, we've got to worry about cell service, but is patrolling and is scared and just wants somebody on the other end because they're in the middle of nowhere to talk to. And they're not trained. And that is insane to me that is still done.
Wow. When a situation starts to fall apart, and a conversation in this state of mind is you're at your wit's end. If somebody's going and they're a cop and they're calling a stranger, you know you're
Yeah.
that's how
The fight could end deadly for, one of the participants, which is not a good thing.
And it's not a
Right.
stranger, it's a fellow officer, and they know that calling that it's going to be a retired officer. So there's some bond already.
oh there is
And once they start asking a couple questions and they vet the listener on the phone, then it's on. They can tell you your real name. Sometimes they can keep their names bogus, obviously,
Yeah.
anonymous. But they let you know everything about their problems, and
Right.
they just open up.
What is I'm just curious myself, what is like average, how many do you get in a given day or on a
So we average anywhere between about 120 something to 160 calls a month.
month? Okay.
So, and part of that is the need to be able to help spread the word, and with your generosity and doing all that you've done for us today, and that we'll be able to do that. Podcasts, public service announcements, is to be able to spread the word, and we know that the lines are being utilized. So there's two states in particular, which is Texas and California, that we've had our most amount of publicity. Those are our two highest calling states. A news network had picked us up. They did a hometown suicide prevention.
Police emergencies? Yeah.
Yep, on one of their shows, and they vetted Copline themselves. They actually called the hotline, which we didn't know, and we saw a huge uptick from the East Coast. So our number one calling state has actually been New York, which we are grateful, truly grateful that's there. So we know once the word spreads. So it's always been a fine balance. We need to have enough retired police officers manning those lines.
Right.
We need to be able to get the word out because we need to truly serve this population. And again, these guys have always had the heavy lift, and I'm going to be with you. I have always had the light lift. It's, I don't get to play one on TV, but I am acutely aware that I'm quite safe in my office in New Jersey. So,
well it's kind of interesting because you're talking about retired cops also fall into this category. What a better resource to keep you active.
Sure.
Imagine all the retired cops that need this as their own lifeline to be able to, that reciprocity and that helping their
Yeah, you give back to
their
the
brothers
badge.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a
that's
great
huge.
outlet. We
Yeah.
do our push in two directions: to help officers, active, retired family members, and to get those guys on board to be an active listener.
Right.
Because the satisfying part is knowing, because we're never going to know if the employee, the officer, sought treatment, if they recovered from it, if they finished their careers out. But we do know for those 2 minutes or 2 hours, and we've had a few of the 2 hours, that officer was not alone. So they had somebody with them in that hole, like Stephanie mentioned, and that's a retired cop trying to do what's right, give back to the uniform and give back to the badge.
Amazing.
To avoid getting into one of those fights with my wife that you referred to, I'm going to have to extract myself out of this podcast right now.
All right.
But no, it's been a privilege to be here with the three of you and to just be part of this whole thing. I mean, I've been involved with the military quite a bit, and for the last 18 years or so, I've been hosting a National Memorial Day concert in Washington D.C. with Gary Sinise, and I've been doing that, and made me think of this as well because just a few years ago we incorporated with that concert a phone-in hotline.
Oh, great.
Because you talk about suicides in the military, the numbers were up to something like 15 a day. We're
it's
having.
22 a day.
Yeah, no, it's up to that.
Yeah.
So they instituted a hotline on the show, and that show's broadcast on PBS and all the military kind of outlets, TV outlets around the world, U.S. bases and stuff. And that's been very successful. So the point, your point being the same thing of just getting the word out there, and hopefully this show, what we're doing right now is getting it out there, that this Copline thing really does work. It's an important thing. And so anybody who, if you know somebody who can use this information, tell them, or, spread the word. And that's, this is what, we
Thank
should
you.
be doing.
Thank you
Does-
for being part of the solution.
No, it's my pleasure. You're kidding. Like I say, I have no problem distinguishing between what I do for a living, which is the pretend version of what guys like Jim here do, and men and women in uniform around the world, really, who. It's one thing to go get up in the morning and say, I'm going to go do my job, which I know in my case, it's like, I'm going to go play pretend, and it's a job that like a lot of people, if you ask them what you want to do for a living, they always, in fact, there's a saying that says the 3 best jobs in the world is to be like you're a rock and roll musician, to be a professional athlete, or to be an actor. But being an actor was the best because you could play the other 2, you know. But it's another thing to get up in the morning and say, I'm going to go be this, whether it's the policeman, the fireman, the person in the military, but yet not knowing, will I come home safe at the end of the day, though?
Yeah.
And that's a bit different when you chose that as your vocation. So I know I personally will never, forget that, and it's so I'm happy to whatever to lend whatever support
We
to
appreciate
what
that,
you
yeah.
do. So thank you for what you do, and carry on.
Carry on. Well, that brings this episode of Box Tot to a close. I want to thank Jim. I want to thank Joe and Stephanie who brought this all together. This is a hot topic. Copline. Do what you can. Really, it's one person makes a difference. We're all connected, and anything you can do to promote this worthy cause is going to help this planet. Thank you. Until next time, so long.